Welcome to this episode of ISV Talks. I'm Carol Livingston, your host of ISV Talks and the owner of Dynamics Connections. And on this episode, I'm excited to have two guests from Mekorma, Aura Goldman and Jay Manley. Welcome, guys.
Hey,
Thank you.
hi.
So tell us a little bit about yourselves, introduce yourself, and also tell us how long you've been with Mekorma.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm Aura Goldman. I founded the company, so I've actually been with the company since 1990. We got into the Dynamics ERP space in 1993, and I'm currently the CEO.
Awesome.
And I'm
Jay?
Jay Manley. I'm the chief evangelist here at Mekorma. I've been here 10 and a half years, and I've been in the Dynamics community for 3 decades as well.
Right. So both of you have been in the channel a long time. And so thank you for that. Tell us a little bit about what are your products? How do you help customers with your solutions for Dynamics?
Well, the main thing that we've always done is we go right into the ERP system and we embed solutions in there. So our current suite has to do with AP automation because way back in the day, one of the solutions that we invented was a check printing product. We found out that payments were a really big pain point for people. And then over the last decade, we've broadened that into a whole suite of AP automation products. And so the special thing we do is the fact that we actually look at what does the ERP provide. I think most companies want to use what they've already bought, so we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but we enhance it and we just deepen it and we cut button clicks out of their processes and we just make it tons more efficient. We add fraud protection, compliance, makes it rock.
All right. Tell us a little bit about, I know there's been kind of a journey, like, you mentioned check printing, right? And then everything became a lot more complex. Well, multiple companies, maybe companies had multiple checkbooks or even different ways of paying. So why did Mekorma Payment Hub get created instead of kind of the previous multi-batch process that you used to have in Micker printing?
Sure. So as you know, we started out trying to solve one problem in particular, and that was to print the Micker line and to format a check more efficiently than Dynamics GP could, especially with Report Writer. Report Writer is great for textual-based reports, but it certainly doesn't have graphics. And so Mekorma figured out a way to put not only that Micker line on the check, but really add a lot of value in creating multiple check formats that you could print from. That was a great process. But then as we started to add more and more and more features, as we started to add things like the approvals process and some of the other things that we added, what happened there is we saw that not only did we have a very large product onto itself, but we started adding little bolt-ons to it. So we've added things like remote payment services, we added things like power approvals. And so those were little bolt-ons. And I thought, well, really that, to me, that means that this payment thing is really the hub of all these other things that are getting bolted on. So it made perfect sense to me to rename it and call it the Payment Hub. And so that's how that came about.
And that was a really good brainstorm from you, Jay, because I really love the idea that we've consolidated to say we solve payments, but it's a multifaceted solution. It's not just one way of solving them. So if you want to print checks in-house, great. But if you want to farm them out, we have you covered. We have remote payment services. And if everyone needs approvals and you don't want to have your approver out on the golf course or catching a plane and not being able to approve. So we try to have you covered for every which way.
Yeah, exactly. So, Jay, what would you say your solutions are addressing and the problems that you're solving for customers?
Yeah, so that's really interesting because we just talked about the payment process, right? So that's a defined process unto itself. So that's from the time you want to make a payment through the payment being made. But on the GP side, we've also added the invoice process. So from the time that the invoice comes in until the time it's a payment voucher, we've added that now as well. So now we have, a more full and complete solution. So from invoice to payment, we cover you completely. Then we added on the outside of that, the remote payment service, as Aura just mentioned. So now you don't even have to print checks in-house. Yeah. Now we can take all that off your plate as well. Saves you a ton of time and effort. Plus, really, who wants to print and stuff checks? That's like last century, right? More importantly is when you take a look at the fact that we've really done that for GP, well, then now we're looking to do that for BC as well. So where can we go in? And as Aura mentioned, we don't just bolt on a solution. We go into the ERP and we kind of muck it around and say, what does a customer really need here? And what do they need over here? And we add all those little bits in there to make the software really driven to the customer's needs, not necessarily what we want to build. We build for the customer, and that's what we're delivering. I think those two are the big processes for GP. Right now, payments is now the process that we're focusing on BC, and you're going to see a whole bunch of work in the next 6 months from us there.
Awesome. Maybe tell us a little bit about what other ERPs are you compatible with?
So we've kind of already talked about the big two, right? We've talked about Dynamics GP.
Yeah.
That's our historical legacy that we've been involved in with the last 30 years. Aura started that all up 30 years ago. In the last 4 years now, we've been trying to figure out what the market is really driving us to on Dynamics BC. And so we're working there. And in the future, we think we might also look to build something similar to that on Acumatica because we see an interesting market there as well.
Right. Yeah. You're solving payment processing problems across multiple ERPs. So that's great. So let me ask Aura, well, first of all, tell us a little bit about the company history and what changes have you seen?
Well, it brings me back, when we start talking about what was happening back in the 1990s, and I was just starting out, right? I was a software developer. That was my background, like a computer science degree and a little bit of accounting. So I took it and just started doing custom development for whoever, and went around to all the partners in the Los Angeles, Southern Cal area, visited them at their office, said, what do you need? And did all kinds of custom. And it just turned out that Mekorma Micker at the time, which was the check printing, took off. Payments were and still are a major pain point. And if you think about, it's the blood flow of the company, because you get the money in and you have to pay it out, and you want everybody to be happy, your vendors, good relationships, and you need to manage your cash flow, and you need to prevent against fraud. So all of these things became just a very good core expertise for us. That's how it went. Now, in the 1990s, you pretty much couldn't fail. Like anyone in this ecosystem, all the customers were like moving off of DOS and getting out of Windows. They were terrified of Y2K, which turned out to be a big, not a problem thing, but they were worried and converting their ERP systems. And so like gangbusters, like we were just growing, and then it slowed down in the 2000s. And then what happened, Microsoft also acquired Great Plains Software early 2000s, as well as SL went in there, and Navision and Exapta. So it's like been a long history of the channel changing over all of this time, right? Now it took about 20 years for the new ERPs to materialize and Microsoft to make its choice of the direction. So I would say like the last maybe 5 years, we've seen a lot of changes in the channel. We've seen our partners have to struggle with what do they want to do. Some partners stayed completely in Microsoft, some partners split their attention, but everyone had to learn new stuff. And everything's driving to the cloud, which is also a big change for everybody. So it's just been fascinating seeing how those changes impact us internally, how those changes impact our customers, our partners. And I would say that's what we've been gearing for. And that's what we think a lot about. So last thing I'll say, when we set our BC strategy, those are all the trends that we kept in mind. So that's why our very first product out was our electronic signatures, simply because it's our most popular feature, whatever. But our first actual paid product out is the remote payment services. And that's because it gets your payments out into the cloud. And it just makes setting everything up super easy. Now, backfilling with more check printing features and with our multi-company stuff. And that will create our full payment suite. So we're hoping that we're addressing the current trends by doing that.
Yeah, and the electronic signature, that was really interesting thing to get that into the app stores for Business Central user, so they could use that right away. And then they become familiar with Mekorma. So when you have other products later on, they already know you, which was, I think, a really great opportunity to introduce yourself to Business Central customers.
It definitely was a way we could put our toe in the water, and it gave us some experience. And that's the thing, like all of these trends, like it's a learning curve, right? Like even dealing with app source is a learning curve.
Right.
Learning new, well, the new ERP system, learning new development tools, how to deploy. We know how to do tech support, that's standard. How to sell, all of that is different. So I just wanted to add one more thing when we're talking about trends is that we see a high trend in shared service AP departments, things like holding companies, things like just companies that are acquiring a lot of M&A companies. We have franchises, restaurants, hotel chains. So that's why we focused a lot of our attention on our multi-company expertise, and not just in terms of people that have a lot of Business Central companies set up, but even if they have binary stream multi-entity management, we've like become more expert and worked very closely with binary stream. And we just look at the multi-entity as a very big trend for our AP departments.
That's great. Kind of what overall are we seeing as far as operational challenges? Like, what are opportunities, I guess, instead of challenges are we seeing in the Dynamics partners and with customers, or both?
Yeah,
So
so let me start first with partners, because I think that's a really interesting topic. Is like Gora mentioned, if we take time back to 30 years ago, when we approached a partner, they were so excited that they would learn your product and sell your product and position your product. And really, a lot of the customers that we have, we never really had to go in and sell to, right? It was just a natural part of that sales cycle for that partner. What we're finding now is with the market has changed quite a bit with things like AppSource and things like that, where the customers are looking for the software differently, and partners are so busy and they have so few cycles to really spend learning other products. We're having a really tough time with that partner penetration. Now, it's not for lack of trying. We love our partners and we're going to continue to work with them, but we just want, any partners watching this to know we're here for you and that we're going to be there when you need our help. We're going to jump on whatever call we need to be on. We're going to help your customer. We're going to solve your need the best we can. On the customer side, that's a little bit different story. It's interesting because if you think about the way that most ERP systems are implemented, where the focus is on from the implementation team is on those areas of the company that are revenue generating. So they tend to go in and look at things like, how can I help out the sales order process? What's your inventory control like? What's your manufacturing process? Those areas, there's lots and lots of focus on. Oh, what's that AP thing over there? We'll just kind of, ignore that and hope that the base system solves their needs. So when we go in and talk to a customer, the customer's like, somebody wants to talk to us. And they're so excited to have that interaction. They don't even know that there's stuff out there to help them. And then when you tell them, hey, we can do this and this and this for you, they're so excited and so willing to learn it and to use it. It's just a very fun experience. So that's my kind of two views on the two different groups that you talked about.
And I'd love to call out a couple of things too. So what Jay was saying about how the AP department is like, second class citizen maybe. Well, one of the reasons we're excited about our remote payment services is it actually returns some rebates back to the customer. So they might not have budget to fix their processes, but hopefully if everything works for them within what we can provide, they'll come out ahead or at least break even. They can actually get ahead more than they think. Because it's not just a net payment to us, but we have the rebates. That's not how we sell it based on rebates, but it's a nice bonus. We sell it based on efficiency. The other thing I want to add is in terms of transition from ERP system. So this is a specific call out in terms of our GP clients who might move to Business Central. That takes a little bit of thought because you're taking a set of processes on one system and it's going to be a bit different on the other system. So we're putting a whole process in place to analyze for the client. Here's what you're using in the AP system, in the GP plus Mekorma features. Here's what we have now. here's what we'll have next year. And you can time your
Mhm.
transition accordingly and you can be fully informed. So it's really important to us for our clients to have a smooth transition and not get any shocks or surprises.
Right. So that's a good segue because I was going to ask Jay, well, what are some of the new things that you're looking to introduce and add value and help customers?
Well, the big area, as we've mentioned, both Laura and I have mentioned so far, is BC functionality, right? So a majority of our efforts for the rest of this year are going to be directly towards Dynamics BC. And so what we're trying to build out there is what we're going to call Payment Hub. And that's going to involve things like a feature similar to what we call the Action Board on GP. We're going to have something similar to that on BC. We're going to have that interaction with the remote payment service directly within the software. So we're taking a look at all the areas that really concern the customer. How, when you print a check, how many formats are we going to give you, and how much editing ability are we going to give you? Because we know that's really hard in BC. We've talked to lots of customers. We've talked to lots of partners that have, spent a lot of time trying to figure out the check formatting issue. And some of them have said it's okay, but it's not really the full solution. We're trying to bring that full solution to those partners. The other thing is, we're not giving up on our GP practice either, right? So we're still looking at those high value add things that customers are bringing us that say, hey, this is an area that you really should, fix this, little tweak this here, fix this up, add this little thing. We're doing that as appropriate for that product. And I think you're going to see a lot of that moving forward. And the nice thing is with our use of the Power Platform, I think you're going to be able to see that we can go to market much quicker with functionality in the future as well. So we've done a lot of that with GP, and it'll be interesting to see what we come up with on the BC side of things.
Yeah, I do love that you have incorporated a lot of the modern Microsoft technologies, like Power Apps and Power Automate for workflow, some AI. So yeah.
Yep.
We actually see some new stuff coming from Microsoft that they announced at Directions, because they said that they're going to use the AI to do an invoice capture like we have done on the GP side. And that's a great opportunity for everybody, because that means the clients already own the invoice capture and they can create an end-to-end AP automation process from invoices through to the payments by just adding the remote payments or the action board. The other piece that we'll be working on immediately subsequent to our Payment Hub version 1 is some vendor compliance stuff. So another area that we're involved in is vendor management, and we're bringing that into both the GP and BC world. We actually started out on Acumatica, funny enough. We have compliance products, so that's called TIN matching, which is where you check that your vendor's EID number is legit with the IRS and that everything is spelled properly, so you can do 1099s. Yeah, you can get fined if these numbers don't match. And so our process would ensure that that's always true whenever you enter a new vendor or change that number. The other one is OFAC compliance, which is the Office of Foreign Asset Control. Essentially, that's paying vendors that have been sanctioned by the United States government. Whether or not you agree with those sanctions, they exist. And we want to protect our clients because the fines can be really, really big. So you definitely want to be warned if like a vendor pops onto that list, and this would be a real-time check on that before your payments go out. And then finally, just like address verification. Does the address show up in the U.S. Postal Service database as being a valid address?
Yeah.
Now, all of that is one step of vendor compliance. And then last mention is a vendor portal so that your vendors can actually update their information, self-serve. I mean, think of the relief on an AP department if your vendors can self-serve a lot of their communications with you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and they can also go check on maybe the status of their payment, right? Instead of calling you. Or I'm kind of curious, I was looking at your website and I was reading some of your testimonials, great from your customers and partners, but one I kind of thought was interesting was a customer went from processing AP payments from like 8 hours, it took them like a full day, down to 2 hours. So tell us, how did that happen?
Well, it's really interesting. So we chip away at the AP process. That can happen from just one of our processes. So just think of what can happen when you combine them. So first of all, if you have a company that's managing, let's say, 13 different companies, And normally their process is to go to one company, select a payment batch, do approval, wait for the approval, print checks, maybe process some ACHs, send that to the bank, post them, reconcile, so on and so forth. Okay. And then they have to go and do that 13 times. And sometimes it's even more complex if they have different types of payment batches and they have different criterias. So the first thing that really helps for shared service AP departments is our action board. And what it does is it simply memorizes that process. So all they have to do is say, I'm doing my Thursday process, click, and it'll go select all the batches. Then they can look them over. They have to edit, like we can't get them out of that part because sometimes they need to fine tune the batches, but then they can just say, all right, send them all for approval. All right, they came back, send them all through. If they, let's say, doing check printing and ACH in-house, and that already just cuts a ton of time off. Now, take another step, because instead of printing the checks and creating the ACH files, what if instead they just send them out through remote payment services and they're literally done? So that company that said 8 hours to 2 hours didn't even have remote payment services yet. So we can actually cut probably more than 80% of your time if you work with all of these tools together. And we've had so many testimonials, like people that say, I just wish we had done it sooner. Or people that say, now my AP specialist can do, and they list a whole bunch of other very needed tasks. They're doing this instead of that.
Yeah, we recently had a truck management company, and they had, I think they had 9 companies in GP, and they came back with a little different comment. They were like, it wasn't that they went from 8 to 2 hours. It's literally that they saved 8 hours a week from their AP processing. That's a significant amount of time. They have 2 people that are processing their AP across multiple companies, and they can now do it all in one run. Not only that, but they outsourced their payments through our remote payment service. And because of that, they're actually going to see an ROI somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 months from all of the costs that it took to implement and everything and purchase our software, full return in about a 6-month period. How many companies can say that? And then everything after that, from that point on to infinity and beyond, is extra revenue to them. And so it really does change their department, because now they can use that additional funds to do additional work, to automate other areas that they haven't automated yet. So it's really important that these customers really understand that for a very small upfront investment, they can have huge and lasting returns utilizing Mekorma. We're really there to help them and to cover them.
Yeah, it's not too often you can say the AP department is actually contributing. They're not just a cost center, right?
Exactly. And the problem when you say contributing is most of them focus on the fact that they're, contributing by stuffing a check and mailing it. But what if they could focus on more important things, like going back to their vendors and getting better vendor discounts, or finding that stuck invoice in the system and clearing it out of their system that's been there for 6 months? There's so much more important things they can do than to stuff a check in an envelope and put a stamp on it.
Working with us, like we actually became, like we've attended APP2P conferences from IOM. We've even brought in a trainer to literally train our whole entire team on AP, whether even if they're not in sales or support. Like our IT team had to attend that. Every new employee has to learn about AP. And the purpose of that is so we can be forward looking. So this is just the beginning. Ultimately, we hope is AI to automate discounts, like finding those discounts and so on. Like there's more to come.
Well, that's exciting. So it sounds like you got quite a list of future add-ons or additions to your features. Tell me a little bit about any other observations, I guess, about AP automation. It's kind of a crowded space, right? What other observations are you seeing as far as the competitiveness and how you guys are addressing AP automation and your unique features?
It's an interesting point. I was recently at DynamicsCon, and someone came up and asked me almost that exact same question. What makes you different? And I think that it's very simple if you think about it. Mekorma figures out how the software works. We use the same tools as that development team uses on that product, and we go build within the ERP system. So we're not a bolt-on solution. Instead, we're a build-upon solution. And why is that better? Because I want to make that really important distinction, is that when you build within the software, number one, the user doesn't have to learn anything new. They're already used to that environment. And number two is we're following the rules of the software already. So there's no weird, external rules that need to be followed for this other process outside over here that's bolted on. And everything is transparent, right? Because all of the data is stored in the ERP. You can do all your reporting right within the ERP. You can do all of your analysis. Everything is right there. It just makes a more complete story. That's why it's so much more important to get a built-on solution rather than a bolted-on solution.
And I would like to add something about the term AP automation. So AP automation is a very big term. It's like a bucket, and it's full of all these different things. So actually, the majority of vendors that use the term AP automation do what's called document management. Document management is on the invoicing side. That's the side that Microsoft is going to have their invoice capture for. Some companies want a full-blown document management system. Maybe they're managing whole other types of documents, but not everyone needs that. We do the payment automation, and we do other kinds of automation. The problem is it's all called AP automation. So when you're a client looking and you say, oh, show me what my options are in AP automation,
Yeah.
it's not a specific enough term to use to search for a solution. The other thing is that there's a class of AP automation vendors that pull it out of your ERP. So they may have both the invoice side and the payment side and a whole process, and you should go look at that. Is that what you want? But for us, we are like, we want to keep our customers within the ERP, and that's why we go and we mastered the ERP.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point, is that you're not just an add-on, it's part of the process. It's seamless for the user. So they're not having to go to another cloud-based solution outside of the ERP. I love that. So Jay, tell us, I know you're talking about using some of the Power Platform and some of the other newer technologies. You want to share what's happening? How you guys are using the Power Platform?
Sure. So on the Dynamics GP side, we saw that there was a lot of needs. One of the areas that we saw a gap in early on was on the approvals process, in that people had to log into GP and do an approval, which is okay. It does work. But the problem is a lot of the people that have to do the approvals, you didn't want in the ERP. You wanted to keep them far, far away from it. So what we came up with was the idea, why don't we make it an app, using the Power App platform, and let them look at the documents that were attached to that voucher and to make that approval right there outside using their phone or their tablet or what other device. But let's keep them out of the ERP, because that's the only task that they had to do was approvals. So we came up with that first. That was our first foray into the Power Platform. Then we saw that there was a need on the invoicing side. And you heard Aura talk about that whole process, right? Invoice to payment. And so we decided to really focus on that area. And when we did that, we saw that, well, there again, if we use a Microsoft Flow attached to the AI engine, and we just had them email in those invoices that they could be read in, brought right into GP for review. So you have this really seamless transfer of information that's really smooth and easy for a user. They don't have to do any extra work once it's set up. There again, it's an easy process. From there, we said, well, some people are going to want to do invoice approvals. So then we added the invoice approval through an app, just like we did with the payment approvals. And we just keep looking at little areas where we can add additional functionality very quickly, very easily. And so most people are like, oh, GP, is going away. GP is not worth investing in. But when you take a look at the speed for the go-to-market using the Power Platform, it's so quick that we can make up that difference in offering new products on the GP platform. So we came up with 4 new products on the GP platform in the last 3 years, and all of them are based on, the Power Platform. That's how much influence that platform has for us. So that's kind of on the new front there. Going forward, there's some interesting things that we're going to do with the vendor portal and the RPS links that we have, where we're going to hopefully be able to add some analysis and things like that in for the user, using some of those tools. And I think that, that's where Power BI might come into play. We're not really sure yet. It's one of those things, the world is open, it's our oyster, so to speak. And we'll figure out all those little points.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is we have the talent, right? We have MVPs on staff. We have contacts at Microsoft. I'm ex at Microsoft, and we have others that are as well. We have the ability and we have the smarts as a company to come up with those neat, new, cool things. But more importantly, it solves real business problems. We're not just doing it for us. We're doing it for our customers, because they're who really matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's nice to say that you're using some of the modern technologies, but it's really a practical reason, like that approver, that manager is traveling, and so they don't have access to a computer. Nor do you want, I like your point about maybe you don't want the CEO or CFO logging into the system. I don't know. It's a good point. They just need to do their process. They need to have the data. They need to see the invoice. I love that.
Yep.
So, Aura, okay, any other lots?
Something else that's just as meaningful to us is what we offer in our software, but it has to do with building relationships. And we've been really, really fortunate to have a long history of relationships with partners, and very loyal partners, and then with customers, many, many customers. And we want to continue that in this new environment. And so what we're trying to learn is what people need, what partners need, how they operate. And we would love any partners listening to this to reach out to us so that we can learn about you. And we are actually looking at each of our partner relationships like very account-based. So we gear what we offer you to what you need and what your strategies are and targets that you're trying to hit and what you care about.
Right. And I think partners are too, right? They care about their customers and how they can help them in the best way possible. And you guys partner with the, Microsoft partners so they can help their customers and you come alongside them. So I love that.
Our watchword is we want to make you a hero for your customer, and we want to make it easy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jay, tell us a little bit kind of along those lines. What is meaningful to your company, to you as a company?
Yeah. So, one of the fortunate things is being on the sales side of things, I get to meet and talk with both our partners and our customers. And the great thing for me is when we attend the big shows, the Dynamics Con and the Summit shows, is that our booth is inundated by both partners and customers that are so happy with what we've done for them. It's,
Yes.
I look at other booths and I don't see that same kind of excitement as what we get every single time we go to these events. They come to us and they tell us their success stories. They tell us how happy they are. They tell us about the problems that we solved for them. And they tell us that they just can't believe how great our support team is and our whole organization. And so to be on the receiving end of that and be able to bring that message back to our team is great, but it's also great to see their success. I mean, their success is what really matters at the end of the day. So I really enjoy that. It's just a fun part of my job and my role.
How about you, Aura? What's meaningful to you as a company?
Well, it's pretty interesting because as the founder of the organization, I've had the opportunity to go through so many years with this company. And I even had a chance from like 2013 to about 2019, I stepped back at least half and explored some other things. So I became really sensitized to how lucky we are, and everyone in this ecosystem. Like, we are basically very fortunate people with a lot of blessings. We have homes, we have security, and there's a lot of stuff going on out there that we actually really care about as a company. So what we're actually doing when we shoot for our future and what we care about, it's not in terms of here's how many people we'll have and here's how many millions of dollars we're going to make. We forecast that stuff because we need to grow as an organization and we need to make sure that we stay in balance. But ultimately, we're looking, like when we look at our 10-year picture, it doesn't have a monetary number in there. It's all about growing as a socially responsible company, about having work-life balance, about having quality relationships, personal and professional development, and trying to see the whole. And those are basically what we do our reflection work around, and everyone in the company is involved in reflecting around that vision and continuing to develop towards that vision.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Jay and Aura, so what is kind of the one trend that you see that's driving partners and customers to come talk to you?
So I think what's really interesting is that partners are finally starting to see that customers' AP departments have been lacking over the years. And so they're finally understanding that there's an opportunity for them that they never realized because they focus, like I mentioned earlier, on the revenue side of the house instead. And now that they're going in there and they're seeing the excitement of those people, it's a different level of engagement than they typically got on the revenue side. And they're really happy with that. So I see that from a partner point of view as they're saying, oh, I didn't even know this opportunity existed. And because we've been talking to partners over the last few years very strongly about changing the way that they look at the AP team, that's really changed. The other interesting thing is for the first time ever, I've seen customers that are really engaged with looking for solutions. They're calling us out of the blue. They're talking to us. They're saying, hey, do you have this, a solution for this? I have this problem. And if you think about what it was like a few years back, they would never do that on their own. They would go to their partner. They would
Right.
just say, oh, there must not be a solution. But today they're actually utilizing all their available resources. They're going out and they're looking for solutions. And because we have such a wide range of solutions now, they're coming to us and saying, oh, I like what I see here. It's built right on the inside of the ERP system. It solves my problems. And again, like I mentioned before, when you do that and you're helping those customers in that way, they understand that you understand them and you have their back. And at the end of the day,
Right.
that just makes for a happy customer. And so that's what I'm so happy that we're able to do.
Well, thank you, Aura and Jay, for joining us on this episode of ISV Talks. I really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you so much for joining us today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just great. Thank you so much, Carol.
And if you want to reach out to the Mekorma team, Jay, do you want to tell us how best to do that?
You can meet with us, whether you're a partner, whether you're a customer. If you want to talk about planning that transition from GP to BC, we're there for you on that. We can talk to your customers if they want to do a discovery call, and we can do lunch and learn. So we have a wide range of things that we're willing to do for you and help you out in all of your efforts. And if you want to get a hold of us as quickly as possible, email us at newsales@mekorma.com, NEWSALES at MEKORMA.com. Anyways, we're there for you. www.mekorma.com. Come visit us. We have lots of information online, lots of videos, lots of learning, lots of blogs. We're there for you. Anything you need, we have it for you. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. And we'll see you on the next episode of ISV Talks videos. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.